Welcome to the LOGSTAT, the Army's premier podcast on all things sustainment, where we analyze new developments, discuss current trends, and forge the path ahead for the next generation of sustainment soldiers. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the LOGSTAT. I'm your host, Captain Garett Pyle. On today's episode, we're getting into the armor side of sustainment and seeing how the armored BCT kind of conducts some sustainment operations, but specifically, we're getting into TiC, the transformation in contact. I know that's been a new buzzword, we'll say, of recent years, but we're going to really see how TiC is operating in action. So I kind of want to take it from an armored brigade combat team because we've done some talks already on some other units that went through it, but yet we haven't touched the armor side of the house or heavy side. So today, we're going to be getting into it, and I have with me as my guest, MAJ Patrick Smith, who's the XO of the 703rd BSB down the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 3rd ID down at Fort Stewart, Georgia. So, sir, welcome. Glad to have you on the show today. If you just want to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Garrett. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Pat Smith. I'm the XO 703rd. I do have some enlisted time in 75th Rangers. I've done PL, Company XO time, Battalion S3, Brigade S4. I also did some broadening time at DevCom. And so now it's great to be in an organization like Sparta and in the heart of Sparta, which is the designation for 703rd.
Well, thank you, sir. And I am very excited for this conversation, specifically for myself even, because I've had really no interactions when it comes to the heavy side of the house. Even though I was down in Fort Hood, Texas, I was with the 13th TSC. So even though that's where, your first cav at down there, did some time there. Then when I was in Alaska, it was strikers, and then we transitioned into infantry. So don't have so much of a background with heavy. So I'm really interested today to learn a lot about you. That's kind of how I want to kick off this episode today, is for you to walk us through what sustainment is like in an ABCT compared to other units.
Yeah. So I share a similar background with you in that most of my time in the Army has been light. But I made the transition because I believe that in order to round yourself out as a logistician, you need to see the heavier side of things. And so the principles of sustainment are still there. It's just the volume that's different. And I think one of the things that you have to be very sensitive to and deliberate about is responsiveness. I'd say that if you take a look at the principles of sustainment, responsiveness is the most critical. And that definitely carries for your maintenance, that definitely carries for your fuel and your ammo. And so it's not too much of a jump, but it does move faster on the battlefield, and you want to make sure that you have a very deliberate shared understanding with the folks that you're supporting.
So what was that learning curve like? You just mentioned that, hey, similar background as me, doing a lot of light prior to this. So what was that learning curve like?
So at first it was diving into maintenance, because on the light side, speed and precision is the order of the day. When you speak to logisticians on the heavier side, I think there's a tendency to sort of poo-poo the light fighters into saying you just don't have to deal with the quantity of stuff that I have to push to the front. But there is a degree of difficulty on the light side. If you've got to insert CDS bundles somewhere, if you've got to make sure a speedball gets somewhere, or if you've got to locate a formation with a very low signature, that is a much different fight than on the armor side. And so I would say that there is some equality and balancing of the two. But certainly for the maintenance side is where I had to sort of jump into the deep end, because that is not too much of a concern, or at least as much of a concern as it is on the heavy side. So.
So yeah, I can imagine it's the fuel consumption is much higher, and then just the focus in on maintenance. So then, now that we're talking about sustainment in an ABCT, your unit's going through TiC right now.
Yes.
Transformation and contact. So what has that been like? Like, kind of walk us through your experience.
Yeah. So this was what I really wanted to share with you all and for the audience today is our innovation experience. Because for the transformation in contact, a lot of the maneuver elements are being issued or given tech and a variety of platforms to figure out what works and what doesn't work. But for us, we are a little further down in the priority for innovation. And so 703rd has become sort of a laboratory of innovation. Now, what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for some of the BSBs, XOs out there, and the BSB commanders and field grades and company grades? And we sort of taken directive here from the chief of staff, which has said, go and innovate. And sometimes that means making phone calls to people and to companies that we believe may have equipment with military capacity. And sometimes that means going through our innovation center. And sometimes that means, as one of the lines of effort of TiC, that means repurposing squads and platoons. So I can start by introducing one of the areas of technology, which is our water systems. I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah. Dive right into that.
So my goal here, Garrett, is this is a podcast, and so I know that when I'm driving into work or driving back from work, I don't want to necessarily listen to the ins and outs of tactical sustainment. I wouldn't. If I was a logistician, I don't know if I would tune in to what I'm about to say on the way in from work. But maybe if I was an armor officer, or maybe if I was an infantry officer or artillery, or someone that doesn't deal with sustainment on a regular basis, yeah, I'm gonna turn on my podcast and passively listen to this if I'm driving from Richmond Hill into Fort Stewart, or if I'm out in Hopewell at Fort Bragg and I'm making that 35-minute commute. But maybe if I'm a logistician, I'm listening to this when I'm in my garage on Saturday and I've finally decompressed, And so I'll try to make this as accessible as possible to all audiences without delving too much into the regulation and the acronyms and so forth. One of the things that you probably remember as a student in Triple C was learning a lot about the Civil War as the sort of the basics of tactical sustainment and even operational sustainment. And I remember that reading about the Gettysburg campaign, that the rear of the Union Army could be defined by a terrain feature. It was called Rock Creek. Mm-hmm. You've got 88,000 soldiers. You've got about 40,000 animals who are all living off of that body of water. And you're also using the water for a variety of hygienic and mechanical reasons. If you look at the Confederate rear area, also defined by Marsh Creek, which serves the same function. And then both of them sort of run perpendicular to a place called Pipe Creek, which is where General Meade has his engineers laying out a fallback position. Suffice it to say that if you look at the Civil War, whether it's those bodies of water, Antietam Creek, Bull Run, and Second Bull Run, both bodies of water, Mine Run, the Chancellorsville campaign, almost, you take a look at a Civil War army or a Civil War battle, and a river runs through it, okay? Even the names of the armies are after rivers, the Potomac, the Cumberland, the Tennessee. Water is often an overlooked facet of logistics. If you think about our campaigns in the Middle East and how many pallet spaces and how much real estate we have to store and to ship bottled water, it's pretty significant, especially considering how much we could dedicate those pallet spaces to something like parts or to class 5, to ammunition, right? And so one of the things we experimented with was something called a water cube. It's created by a company called Genesis Water Systems. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to put it to you like this. There's nothing terribly fancy from what I can see with this system. It is a dehumidifier that conducts triple osmosis purification, which means it's a dehumidifier that will provide you Aquafina, okay? We've gotten our hands on some 10-gallon systems, so that's capable of pulling and producing 10 gallons of potable water in about 18 to 24 hours. We also experimented with a 100-gallon system, and that does the same for 100 gallons. And so what we're trying to do is reduce the overall sustainment signature, right?
And that's just pulling water out of the air.
Pulling water out of the air. And I did a little work over at DevCom, and the folks there had the absolute right approach, because they were trying to do something called soldier touch points, which means, and they were calling it science and technology in the dirt, S&T in the dirt. And what that means is they weren't doing some champagne and oysters, white glove experimentation with industry where it's a perfect experimentation, and oh, by the way, it's going to be 10 years until we see some movement on it. Mm-hmm. We're taking this tech and we're giving it to a PFC 92 Golf, so a cook, and we're giving him good NCO supervision, and we're telling him, hey, you're going to have this 100-gallon water cube, and you're going to use it for your field feeding operations. And you're going to be doing it for 45 days in the mud at Fort Stewart, Georgia. And we're going to take that off of it. And then we're going to provide it to the Army. And so that's been our approach. And we found a lot of, the system performs as advertised. There are some things that we have to figure out with power generation. But we think we've turned the corner on something that we can share with the Quartermaster Commandant and CASCOM, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's such a unique capability, because as you're alluding to, we're talking about the Civil War and just so many other conflicts throughout history, is that we rely on water, and we can't move a force forward without water.
To add to that point, we saw a memo on class, right? That was from one of the sustainment leaders from the Air Force at a base in Saudi. And a lot of the class 1 into the base was restricted for a variety of security reasons, but there's very limited means of getting into the base. As it turns out, the Air Force personnel on the ground had several of these 100-gallon water cubes, and they were able to survive, essentially, without having to use gray tails, so military assets for moving water, or run the risk of withdrawing people from the area. They can continue mission because they had these assets.
And this is something you guys yourselves have been experimenting
Yes.
with. Have you, what kind of like, just through field, like in the garrison, through field training exercises?
Yeah, through field training exercises. So we're looking at, ideally you want something that's going to scale up. So with an ABCT, I mean, you've got 4,500 soldiers. So a 10-gallon system is nice for a fire team.
Not going to get you too far though.
Exactly, right? A 100-gallon system is nice for, maybe a platoon, depending on where you're fighting. Mm-hmm. But, at the end of the day, the feedback we're providing to the Army is we want to scale up.
Mm-hmm. Almost going to have its own truck system, it seems like.
That would be ideal.
Can be able to be able to hydrate that number of people. But water is so critical, and just to see how you're experimenting, and that's the big point of TiC, is get out there, seeing what's going to work, what's not going to work, because we're not going to know unless we try.
100%. And I can, if you'd like, I can bring up.
Of course.
Another thing that we're working on here is, so you mentioned before the light versus heavy dynamic, and one of the things that we have been experimenting with and we have implemented is something in 2nd ABCT called the SPAR program, which stands for Spartan Aerial Resupply.
Okay.
Now, in the past, for ABCTs, for armored elements, maybe in one-off circumstances at CTC rotations, there were speedballs or there was some aerial delivery. But what we've done in-house is that we have integrated vertical replenishment from a variety of platforms into our methods of sustainment. I'll just say this for the folks that are listening out there. How do you do this? How do you start from ground zero? And so I'll lay out the steps first and sort of fill in the blanks. But I would say, step 1, reach out to your aerial delivery tech. I don't know if every division is MTOD 1, but I know most have them. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have them at the division level, they probably have them at the corps level. The second is that you can order what's called LCLA, low cost, low altitude parachutes at your SSA. Okay.
And this is for equipment?
This is for equipment.
Okay.
Yeah. Or MREs. The third thing you do is you rig your equipment. So something up to about 200 pounds, you get a couple of boxes of MREs, maybe some boxed water. You take your A7 cargo strap and you attach your parachute. Obviously, that's inspected by your aerial delivery tech. You put in an air mission request from your local aviation brigade and you drop it. Now, dropping it is going to require some involvement from your pathfinders, obviously. But one of the things that we've done in Sparta is just this. And we have people that have never jumped from aircraft. They don't live the airborne life. Some of them have never even been on an airplane before. So we've got 88s, we've got, mechanics, truck drivers, we've got cooks, we've got supply techs that are packaging these LCLA deliverables, and we're working with our cab to do parachute insertions. And the reason we're doing this is because in large-scale combat, we already know what the most discernible threat is to our ground lines. Okay? We saw that in Afghanistan and Iraq. Improvised explosive devices. And today, in this sensor-rich environment, the enemy can detect a large lumbering signature like a convoy coming 20 miles away to your combat trains command post to dump off a bunch of supplies. What if we can speed that up, especially for the armor folks, and make it a little more precise, especially in areas that are hard to get to? Now, a lot of the armor folks came back and said, it just doesn't deliver the volume that we need this stuff in. Like 15 LCLAs with MREs are great, but I need a tank engine. I need some fuel. I need some rounds. And so in February, we went out and we actually visited our local Air National Guard element. They don't have anything on the scale of Green Ramp or a heavy drop rigging facility like Fort Bragg, but they do have folks that are aerial delivery qualified, and we were able to bring in enablers from the Corps, and our folks, our mechanics, were able to rig A-22 cargo bags, high velocity parachutes, and actually take part in some of the departure airfield activities, the drop zone activities with the Air Force. And we ended up dropping 19 tons of equipment.
Oh,
So
wow.
a variety of, so fuel blivets, parts, medical equipment, food, water. And when your armor counterparts see this and it's real to them, then they start to buy in.
Okay. And this is all air, like parachute in. This is an air assault, like with sling loads. This is, you're talking about parachuting this stuff in.
Yes, sling loads are a part of it too. And we did have a sling load package. So instead of doing a log pack, for example, on one of our missions, we had 2 aircraft. The first aircraft came in, and 2 rotary wing aircraft. The first Chinook came in and pushed out bundles. And the second aircraft had a sling load of which was a hippo, so a bunch of water.
Yeah.
Went back, picked up a flat rack with our slick qualified folks, and dropped off some parts. And so the capability is there, especially if you make the right connections and you have people that are willing to take the initiative. And so it became an eye-opening experience for a lot of our sustainers and maintainers to repurpose them as not only folks who work in an SSA or that drive a truck, but that have an understanding of actually conducting multimodal sustainment.
All right, so it's really interesting, just and really cool to see how you guys are taking these different technologies and really applying them to the field, getting other people involved, getting people cross-trained. So it's really interesting how you're doing that. So what kind of other technology is your team working on when it comes to TiC?
Yeah, so one of the technologies that I think is needed out there is maybe an AI platform that helps us with LOGSTATs for a variety of reasons. Number one, we've tried a variety of companies, and a lot of the versions that are out there are not much better than, say, QLit. They're just nicer to look at, right? They're calculators. The second reason is because LOGSTATs are sort of the lifeblood of our sustainment planning. And without accurate LOGSTATs, without an accurate picture of where we sit on certain commodities, we're planning in a vacuum. And so I would say, if there's anyone listening out there, we could use something like that. On the topic of AI, though, I know a lot of folks out there use Gemini AI. And this is something that we've had a high degree of success with. And as I casually mention this, I figure that this is old news to people because it's not that complicated. So we took our last 24 months of our ESR, our equipment status report, and we fed it into Gemini AI, as if to say, where are we going wrong? Where are the fault trends? Or do you see any fault trends? Because we knew what our strengths and weaknesses were, at least at face value. But to aggregate all of that data, day in and day out, and to sort of find out where the weak points are, that's a tool that could help us out. And so one of our weak points was our bulk fuelers, so our 978 Hemet trucks. They've sort of been the bane of our existence. And before each field problem, we seem to build up combat power, reduce combat power in the field, and then build it back up again. But every time we go to the field, it seems like more and more of our fuelers become non-mission capable. And it turns out that about 40% of the faults for our fuel systems have to do not with maintenance, because we're not talking drivetrain faults necessarily, like transmissions and engines and so forth, but rather faults with the pump. And so as we dug a little deeper, we found out that there are training shortfalls. PTO pump, main pump, and so forth. Like, I can go down the list.
About the user error.
User error,
Yeah.
right? And so what's happening is we were exhausting our maintainers at the expense of a lack of training for the folks that were on those systems. And so to mitigate that, well then, this is how we're going to orient Sergeant's time training. And as it happened, it really brought together myself and the command sergeant major so that I was like, Sergeant Major, from a systems and readiness standpoint, here's how I think we can orient some of the training. And he's got it from there. And to have that kind of communication was invaluable. And so in the end, is it really TiC? Is it really innovative? Perhaps is a different way of looking at it. But that tool was very valuable to sort of lay the azimuth out for our NCOs on what needs to be trained on.
Nice. So when it comes to like some lessons learned, through these technologies, what have you learned so far, good, bad, or indifferent, when it comes to being an Armor Brigade combat team and going through TiC, especially with the integration of these various technologies that you're working through?
I think that at some of our best, I think some of our best advocates are the innovation labs, because they're tied to all the people that know the path, right? So the guidance is, hey, get in the dirt, innovate, try things out, fail. But if you come across something that actually succeeds, what then? What's the procurement, the path to procurement, right? And so the innovation labs sort of have the right sort of bureaucratic guardrails in place, because we've been avoiding them at this point to sort of get us on the right path and put us in contact with the right people so that we can continue to experiment. I'd say the other part about this is getting the word out. So having the conversation with your brigade commander and your brigade XO to say, hey, I know you need beans and bullets, right? But in looking at the future in about 5 to 10 years, if we experiment with this platform here and now, we could make significant gains, especially if providing bottom-up feedback to the Army. And so to have them in your corner, especially when they're relying on you for everything.
Yeah, because you're going through, you're testing things out, which in the moment might slow down operations while you're training, but it's going to yield great results down the road because you're seeing what's working, what's not working, and then having them with the buy-in, so that gives you the ability to experiment.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And so, and not only that, but eventually you're going to get to a crossroad where the technology that you're experimenting with either cross-pollinates or sort of meets a line of effort that somebody else is experimenting with. For example, we have been issued ATAC systems, okay? And
getting all the fancy stuff.
All the fancy stuff, slowly but sure, right? And there's an app on there. It's called LOGSTAT Plus, in which you can submit a LOGSTAT. And this is something that we've experimented with in-house, but now I can talk to all of the battalion S4s across the formation who are combat arms, and my colleagues who are battalion XOs that are combat arms. And they can use this tool in support of a sustainment innovation effort.
Wow, that's a very unique thing. That's first, hearing about that. Just have that at your fingertips like that. Just be able to flip it down, be able to enter in your LOGSTAT. Just the synchronization across the battlefield will really help prepare us forward, keep us more mobile, especially when it comes to the armor side, when it's always about that speed pushing forward. You're not going to be worrying about getting LOGSTATs when it could be outdated as soon as you get it. It's interesting to see how that type of technology is going to really propel us forward with that. So when it's coming to like the integration of the existing capabilities, right, especially from light to heavy, how has that affected sustainment operations?
Just to be clear, the question is,
are you taking like stuff that light formations have done so far in TiC,
right,
and integrating them to the heavy side now?
Yeah. So you have to see if you can scale up. That's the first thing. But there's also technologies that, regardless of its light or heavy, you can still implement. And so you look for those. So for example, the tactical resupply vehicle. So it's called a TRV 150. All right. So this is something that, from what I believe, light formations have used. And the technology was fielded to ABCT as a method of smoke obscuration for the engineers. And so we took a look at this thing and said, well, wait a minute. Resupply is in the name. We're not going to try to move an engine with this thing because the payload is in the name, 150 pounds.
Just slightly,
Yeah.
The engine might be just slightly heavier.
That's right. But what is the most important commodity on the battlefield? And that's blood. And the quantity of blood you'd have to move for an ABCT is relatively the same, if not less, than what you would have to move for a light formation. Same amount of people. I think some light formations are even more.
So yeah, definitely. It's a way to look at it that a lot of people would never even think of. When it comes looking at it as from blood, it's like, okay, a lot of ways infantry might have more when it comes to that because that's their main fighting force.
Exactly.
Where here in the heavy, you're like, okay, I got to have my fuel. It's the lifeline there.
100%. 100%. So we found a rigging solution for essentially a box of live blood, and we were able to. We had 3 of our medics train up on the TRV 150 with some of the DevCom folks that came out in February, and we were flying this thing over the treetops of Fort Stewart to different sustainment nodes. Now, we also tried to evac Rescue Randy. That didn't work. So that came back down to earth.
And Rescue Randy is
Rescue Randy's a little more than 150 pounds, so we had to take out a couple of took out an arm and a leg, and we were able to move him.
Yeah, and this is like the dummy you use.
That's right.
Just so the audience like, what does he mean?
Yeah.
Rescue Randy? What is that?
That's right. Yeah. So Rescue Randy is sort of the dummy you use for medical training. So whether that's CPR or honestly a variety of uses for battlefield care.
So it didn't work for.
It did not work. So that came right back down to earth. So we had to start removing some of Andy's.
So he had more injuries after the fact and when he went up.
That's right. But I mean, that is a good example of or a microcosm of failure and success with this.
You're not going to, everything you try is not going to always work.
100%.
And as we're talking about, like, it might work for things we're trying for light, might not equate to working for heavy, and vice versa.
That's right.
And that's the whole point of doing this TiC operation, is testing everything out.
That's right. Yeah. To your point, I mean, the payload limit of a TRV 150 or even an LCLA parachute is not the weights of most critical parts that will go onto a tank or Bradley are much too heavy. Mm-hmm. And so while you can drop some of those things, you can't drop most. That can be mitigated through something like through a containerized delivery system, which we did experiment with, but you have to have the right platforms. And so, yes, it does remain a challenge, but we continue to look for methods of sort of increasing or expanding the aperture of our methods of distribution.
So it's definitely, and I'm just really enjoying this conversation, just seeing how, because I've talked with people as it comes to light, but really hearing it from the heavy side. And so now looking at you're getting through TiC right now. We've talked about seeing what sustainment's been like on the heavy side. And for the audience, now you guys are an IRF formation.
Yes.
So before we even get into adopting that mindset, like, can you explain to the audience what that is, being an IRF formation?
Yeah. So IRF it means immediate response force. So anywhere on the globe that requires, or wherever there is some type of global contingency that requires the presence of a given element, if you are on IRF, you have to be responsive. Now, depending on your element, like the 82nd Airborne or the 75th Rangers, or a variety of other special operations units and other enablers, are in a much shorter string. So maybe 18, 24, 96 hours.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think of like, and just looking at it, it's like, okay, this is heavy. These are tanks, these are Bradleys. It takes a sec to move those. You don't think when you hear IRF that that's going to be under them. You're thinking, like you said, 82nd Airborne, someone who can get there very quickly across anywhere in the globe.
100%. That doesn't necessarily mean that some elements of armor can't be part of that initial package, at least in the first 96 hours. So one of the things that we've done in Sparta was ensure that our formations are airload planner certified. And so if we can get to the flight line and get our Bradleys on a C-17, we can insert them at the point of need wherever that's needed. The remainder or the preponderance of an IRF package would probably arrive a little bit later in the game, but we're still talking about no notice. We're still talking about days. And so what does that require to get into that mindset? Because the tempo, from what I gathered, was sort of steady state. We know we're going to NTC on this date, and then on this date, we know we're going to deploy in support of this or that mission. The mindset then changes to, at 2:00 in the morning, I could get that phone call. Mm-hmm. And so that means things have to move faster. I think we have to get away from, and this is a topic I've thrown out there with my peers, we have to get away from DMV logistics. So you've been to the DMV before. I know you're from the Pittsburgh area, and I'm from the New York area, and I would wager that there's not a whole lot of difference. So you get to the DMV, you need to renew your license, you walk up there, and you have all your forms ready, and they tell you, you know what, you actually need 5 other Department of whatever forms. Go back to the end of the line, fill those out. And, oh, by the way, we're going to be on lunch break by the time you make it up.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a fee, there's a late fee or something like that. And it's just, you are negotiating layers of red tape to finally get something so simple. And I think that is, I remember coming up, after I've been in the Army for 18 years and coming up as a logistician, there was always an insistence of being good custodians of Army equipment. For my foxhole, I think we've gotten there. But we have to, even if we're good custodians, we can't be gatekeepers. And so from the lowest level, whether you're working in the SSA, or whether you're a mechanic, or whether you're a medic or a cook, you always have to be responsive. And if you're going up to the SSA and you need a part to get that tank up and running, which is a critical enabler, you cannot, if you're working in the SSA in the supply warehouse, you can't close down and say, hey, it's lunchtime, or hey, no, come back later with this or that form. We know that there's a paper trail and that there's administration that needs to be followed. But when we talk to our combat arms counterparts, they don't talk in our language all the time.
No, there's definitely a break in communication sometimes with that.
So we have to lead them, okay? Even if we are making it simplistic, and we have to take time out of our time to ensure that they get what they need. And sometimes that means doing it at the drop of a hat. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably don't like hearing that, because what we do is we live in the realm of procedures. Everything about logistics is procedural. But sometimes we need a little initiative. We need a little hustle in our step to ensure that at the end of the day, the people that we're supporting get what they need. And so what we've done, and I know that's not a very technical answer, actually it's the opposite, but what we've done is that we've charged our formation to be as responsive as possible to the folks that are in the Bradleys and in the tanks, and to at times bend over backwards to make sure that they get what they need. Conversely, we've asked the people that we're supporting for patience, and we've also done a variety of LPDs to educate them on the back end. And so while that doesn't sound flashy, especially when we're talking about IRF, we are laying the seeds so that when we are in contact with the enemy, we are moving at a much faster pace.
Oh, yeah. So with the IRF, we talked about some technologies. When it comes to TiC, has any of their formations changed? Or are they going to be, changed? Because I know a lot of other units, we got LSBs now. We're changing the way those formations work, especially on the lighter side. What about for the heavy side?
No, from what I gather now, there is no change now, and there are no major proposed changes to the support relationships that are in effect. And so from my foxhole, the Brigade Support Battalions will remain with the Brigade combat teams, and continue to support them. That's not to say that we can't repurpose a platoon from time to time. So this platoon in Alpha Distro is going to be the aerial delivery element for the brigade, and so forth. Or this team that has combat cooks, 92 Golfs, they're going to be the subject matter experts on the water purifying systems, and so forth. And the same with our mechanics, right? So I think just about every ABCT motor pool has some flavor of additive manufacturing. And so they are the executive agents of everything that gets 3D printed.
Okay. So it's definitely good to see, because I know we've talked to a lot of light units, and they've seen all their big, they have a lot of big changes, not just the technology, but formations. But so it's interesting to see how on the heavy side, you guys are focusing more on the technology and the equipment over the formation side of it when it comes to continuous transformation. So is there anything else we missed today that you wanted to highlight when it comes to sustainment in an ABCT, or how you guys are working through the different TiC operations?
I mean, it's a continuous and evolving process. I hope that when I'm out of the seat, that some of the things that we've worked on gain traction at higher echelons in the Army, and I would hope that that a lot of the ABCT logisticians out there who are really at the front line and the cutting edge, and that's where the rubber meets the road for sustainment, from where I can see, that they are experimenting with their formations, and that they are sharing their lessons with their brigade commanders and their counterparts across the Army.
So, well, I just really want to thank you for this conversation today, because I learned a lot myself, because not having anything really with the heavy side of the house. So just getting little tidbits that I can take forward now to really help me be a more well-rounded logistician. But on that, do you have any good advice for the sustainment community?
I would say, just hearkening back to what we had discussed, I would say, make friends with your counterparts in the combat arms. It will go a long way when you're on a first name basis with those folks, and you start to share your experience. Okay, so for example, this last week, all of us battalion XOs have a huddle, and I asked the brigade XO, I said, hey, how about we do this in the SSA? And so we went over there, and these other 04s may have been to the SSA in passing, which is the supply warehouse, right? But they actually went back to where we receive all of this stuff that goes out to them. They see the FedEx trucks backing up, and UPS, and all of these boxes and all of these soldiers.
Just a sea of boxes.
Just to see the mass of stuff that's coming in and being organized, and to see these soldiers ripping through and organizing and tagging these items. They finally get a sense of, wait a minute, there's a group of people behind the system that I watch on the equipment status report every single week.
As I sit there and go, where's my stuff at? Why do I have this part?
That's right.
But if they haven't actually gone down there and seen it.
Exactly. Like bring them into the back of the DFAC, of the dining facility. Bring them back there. All right. See how hot it is in those kitchens. Bring them down to where the fuelers are. See how a bulk-to-bulk transfer happens. Bring them over to the troop medical clinic, right? See what the providers do every day. And so if you get an opportunity to do that, make friends, show them what you do, and you will see the support and that relationship forthcoming.
Well, thank you very much for that, sir. I've heard that so many different times, and I just wish more and more people would execute that advice, because it would solve so many of our problems if we could just get on the same page. Because as we talked about beforehand, it's sometimes it's speaking two different languages, but bridge that gap. Bring them, the people that we are supporting, bring them to the places where they're getting their support from. Get them to the SSA, like you said, get them out to the DFAC so that they can see how these operations are going. Because far too often, people are like, they expect it right then and there. They don't see the behind the scenes on everything that goes into it. Because as sustainers, we are working every single day. It's not like we're just, oh, we got this training mission, we got that training. We are executing every day our mission so that we can enable others to do their training mission. And sometimes that gets lost.
100%. And the call signs of the different battalions in Sparta are all nouns. You've got a hound, panther, Mustang, but the call sign for 703rd is a verb. It's maintain, because the job, the very existence of being in a BSB is to work.
Exactly, and I like how you guys did that. The nouns versus the verbs. So we've had a great discussion today. I know there's going to be some people out there that's going to have some follow-up questions that want to be able to maybe pick your brain. Those who are maybe going into a heavy for the first time, who knows? There might be a lieutenant out there. It's like, I'm about to go to a heavy. What am I getting myself into? Where can they find you at if they can for follow-up?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also I'm on Global. So there's a lot of Pat Smiths out there. I'm number 266. So,
wow, I didn't know there was that. That is probably one of the highest numbers in an email that I think I've seen before.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out anytime you're in the Fort Stewart area.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir, very much for taking the time to come in today to talk us through what it's like to be part of an Armored Brigade combat team, seeing sustainment and seeing your TiC operations. So thank you very much, sir.
And thanks for having me. It was a treat to come here. Thank you.
Of course, sir. So there you have it, folks. Our first taste into what sustainment is like on the heavy side of the house. So hopefully you all enjoyed today's episode, getting a taste of how we've talked a lot from the light side. Now we really got to dive into the heavy and really got to see how a heavy unit is going through transformation and contact and all these unique capabilities that they're bringing to the forefront. We talked about, especially at the beginning, water and how we're able to, get water out of the air to help fuel our bodies that way. So there's a lot of new technology that's out there. So I highly implore you, if you're in a unit right now, specifically a TiC organization, write about it. Tell us your story and submit your articles to the Army Sustainment Professional Bulletin so we can hear about how your unit is specifically, trying out different technologies so that we don't exist in a vacuum. We see here today from the 703rd what they're doing. They're telling their story. So I want to hear from you on your story, because then we can all come together and be able to say, okay, this is what works here. This isn't what works. So we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So please reach out to me. I'd love to be able to help you out, to be able to help you tell your story, and even be able to get you on the episode of the podcast so you can even more tell your story. But that is all we have today, folks. As always, sustainment leaders start here. See you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of the LOGSTAT. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Please share this episode across your formation and leave us a review. If you have a topic you'd like here discussed, then please reach out to us at armysustainment@army.mil or directly to me on Global at garett.h.pyle. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the U.S. Army CASCOM page. We'll see you next time. Sustainment leaders, start here.